In this video, I'm going to be breaking down an insane animation from Iman Gadzhi's new series that he just started. If you've seen the videos, it's a completely new style. It's like dark and cinematic, which I absolutely love. And trust me, there's a lot of skills to be learned here, so let's begin. But first, here's the scene we'll be recreating in this video with sound turned on.
It does not matter if the US dollar collapses. It doesn't matter if there's a war. It doesn't matter if there's a recession.
Now, all the assets that I use, I'm going to leave it in the description below. You can download everything for free. However, if you want to get the project file of this entire thing, it'll just be a small fee. So, for the first scene, we can see a very nice animated background, which I'll show you how to create. I'll show you how to make each element, how each one appears into the scene with all the little details. And my favorite, and probably the most difficult, is the shattering effect with the graph line animation. Now, I did create my own background while still keeping it similar to Iman Gadzhi. And to be honest, this wasn't easy. Quite a bit went into it, so let me just go over what I did from scratch. First, for the animated background, I downloaded a moving liquid background from Vecteezy. It's a website which Iman Gadzhi's editor loves using. Now, all I did was add a tint and lumetri color. I adjusted the curves a little bit until it looked something like this. Then, I simply created a black solid and masked half of it. I increased the feather to something around 500 to add those shadows. I duplicated it a bunch of times and adjusted the positioning of each one. This way I can match the amount of darkness Iman Gadzhi has. By then it looked something like this. However, if you pay attention to his video, he has that pixelated grid RGB look. So I did my own thing to match it. I found this RGB dots from Google and downloaded it. And I added these two effects to get the look we needed. But for extra details, I created a new dark blue solid and added these effects on top of it. You can just copy me if you want or download the file below. To finish off, I added my own grid overlay and some deep glow to give the wider parts a little more shine. In my opinion, this background matches the cinematic style like Iman Gadzhi's video. First, I just created the main shape that we needed, which is very easy, simply using the shape tool and messing around with the colors and sizes. However, make sure to separate the stroke from the fill. So I duplicated it, renamed it main shape stroke, and added a color that was a mix of yellow and lime green. So you should have one fill layer and one stroke layer. Once I did that, I simply downloaded a cross target aim icon and changed the color to yellow. Then I used the pen tool to create the circle. You could also use plugins, which I recommend, but for this tutorial, I'm doing everything from scratch so you can learn. Now I created some guides for myself, so I can make the craft line accurately. And this is actually a little bit more complicated than you think. I'm sure you know that you have to use the pen tool to create lines, but here's some extra tips, especially if you don't have that much experience with After Effects. First, make sure to hold shift when you're doing this so you can create a straight line. Once you have something like this, open up the shape layer, contents, shape 1, stroke 1. Click the plus icon by the dashes. Change the value to 25. And make sure this is selected on round join. Then adjust the offset, which changes the positioning of the line dashes as you can see here. Now, if your line cuts off like this at the end, just select your shape layer, make sure you select path, then grab your pen tool, and while holding shift, drag this to complete the line. You can do this at the other end if you need to as well. Now, you want to know what separates the top 1% editors from the rest? It's their ability to pay attention to the fine details. If we look again at his animation, you'll notice that towards the end of the graph line, the dashes are thinner, and towards the middle, they're thicker. To do this, it's actually very easy. On our shape layer, click on taper, change both start and end length to 100%. Then change start ease and end ease to 85%. I personally like how this looks, and it's not too aggressive. But again, throughout this video, it's some trial and error, so you might see me adjusting different things. Now begin to write down each word and create the 3 circles using the ellipse tool. We will focus on animating everything after we set it up first. So I'm just going to fast forward this since it's easy and you know how to use the text tool. But if you're curious for the fonts, I'm using Montserrat mainly. I mess around between the boldness of the text. So the words on the outside are thinner and the ones inside the main shape are thicker. If you need time, you can pause the video and continue it after you've set up everything like me. This is going to be the foundation. Next, let's create the number animation, which is very easy because of the preset I have. I'm going to leave this expression that you see on my screen in the description. You can also download the preset because it makes your life so much easier. I use this pretty much every video I edit. Literally not even joking, so just follow the instructions below. I got it from Validation, so shout out to him. Create a new text layer and apply my number counter preset. And this is not that hard to use. Open it, go to source text, and add a $ symbol right here in the expression, in between the quotation marks. Then make sure you're at the very beginning and make a keyframe for the angle control. Let's start somewhere around 2 million like Iman Gadzhi. I'm just going to write random digits. Once you do that, go to the end of your timeline, and now write a number between 6 and 7 million, so I'll just write a random number again. Then select both keyframes. Press F9 to make the animation smoother. Now you should have a simple counter. Later, we're going to turn on motion blur because it makes it look so much better, and this is what Iman Gadzhi did. However, we want to turn off all the effects for now so we avoid lag. You'll notice that the percentage number inside the green rectangle is also animating, so just do the exact same thing. For this though, I use the font called VCR OSD Mono. It looks really clean, especially for numbers. And when you make your shape and your text, do not forget to pre-compose both the layers so you can move the shape with the number at the same time. Now go into the composition. Start at a low number like 22% and reposition it so it's at the center. Once you're done, go to the end of your timeline. Change the value to something like 950. Do what we always do with the keyframes by pressing F9 to ease. Now we have a problem. You're going to notice that the number isn't staying centered. So here's how we will fix that. Go to the exact moment when the number becomes a 3-digit number. So right here, I'm going to make a cut, then I'll center this again. Cool, so we now have successfully created this simple counter animation. Nothing too difficult so far. However, that's about to change. So please go grab a drink of water before we proceed to the next part of this animation. The shattering split effect. Now, I did something off camera. I downloaded the video from Iman Gadzhi and just synced the animation I'm breaking down so I can simply view it right here in After Effects. I also did it so I can time the hits with the sound design of his video. You don't need to do this, especially if you just want to learn how to make the effect. This is not necessary, but if you want to follow along with me, I figured I should just mention it. So, the first step is to pre-compose our shape layer. Then go to the point where you want the shape to start breaking and then make a cut. Once you do that, apply the shatter effect onto that clip. Now follow carefully what I do. Change view to rendered. Open up the shape, change pattern to glass, and increase the repetitions to 200. Next, create a white solid. Hide the layer. Go back to where you can see the full circle, so just go back one frame before our cut. Make sure the white solid is selected, and create a mask using the pen tool for the area we want to split, just like I do here. Go back to the clip with the shatter effect. Open gradient, put threshold to 1%. Then open this up right here and make sure to select our white solid. And change this to effects and masks. Now you might see something like this or nothing at all, and that's because we have to adjust the origin points of the forces being applied. So I'm going to open these up and position them towards the bottom left of our shape. Finally, grab the top one, which is in the shape tab, and put it right in the middle of the circle. Now this matters a lot. When you move this around, you get a different look of how the shape is cracked. You can also keep playing around with the mask since that affects the look as well. Keep playing around with both the origin point and the mask to get the look you want. After a little while, I got this and I like it. And there you have it. We have done it. However, it's not realistic. It just suddenly cracks open. So to fix this, we have to extend the pre-composed layer that we cut and move it all the way to the right so it's at the beginning, where we made our cut originally. Now you should see the shattering motion, but we need to make it look nice, so just copy my settings. I will also have them up on the screen. Make sure to play around with the origin point of force 1 since that will affect where the pieces end up, and also feel free to adjust the mask on the white solid like I mentioned before. The bigger it is, the bigger the effect. Once you're happy with it, apply a gradient ramp so we can create a color change effect upon impact. Make the black color a light red and choose a radial ramp. Then make the white color a little bit gray, not too much. Then reposition the points until you get a similar look to mine. You're gonna see that I have it on the left side because that's where the line will strike the circle. After you've done this, I want you to make a keyframe. Go just less than 1 second further and change the color back to white. However, we're gonna make this even better. Have the keyframe that changes the color to red exactly when the shattering is visible, and then 2 frames behind it, add another keyframe and make it fully white. This way, it doesn't just abruptly change color, it just looks cleaner this way. And don't forget to ease the keyframes. Now I want you to duplicate the layer twice, so you should have 3 now on your timeline over each other. Select the top one and change the render to pieces, and for the other 2, change the render to layer. The reason we're doing this is because when you switch the render to pieces, for example, then that layer will only show the pieces that were shattered, not the entire circle. But to fully separate all 3, we're gonna need to use some masks. So select one of the bottom layers and create a mask around 1/2 of the circle. Then select the last layer and do the same thing, but for the other half. Congratulations! We have now successfully separated all three elements. Now we can keyframe the position and rotation values for both the top half and the bottom half. Just make sure the anchor point is centered before you do anything. And a little tip, you can do that by holding Control on your keyboard and double clicking the anchor point tool at the top. Now simply push the top half further up and the bottom half slightly down. Play around with the values until you get something similar to mine. Also, when you're done, ease the keyframes and adjust the graph by making it start fast at the beginning and slow towards the end. That's it. Now all you have to do is repeat that for the other three circles. So obviously I'm not going to redo it. If you need to, you can rewatch this part of the video again. Alright, now that you have created the shadow effect for all the three circles, let's move on to the next step. We're going to add animations to all the text that we have on the screen and the shapes appearing, which we can do with a click if you just download Mr. Horse plugin. There is a free and a paid version. I have paid, but I'll be using here you have access to as well. I do recommend investing into this if you want to take your editing to the next level and save an insane amount of time. Because this right here on their website is not a marketing scam. It is actually true. In Iman's animation, the text is just fading in, so I'm going to apply this fade characters preset, then I'll just move the layers around so they don't all start at the same time. I want a little bit of delay and I want the number counter to start a little bit after. I'm also going to add a scale bouncing preset from Mr. Horse to the three main shapes, so they scale up smoothly. Just make sure whenever you're applying anything that the anchor point is centered. If not, it will cause you problems, so just always double check. Then finally, I will apply this fade and position animation from the paid Mr. Horse version again. However, if you don't have this, it's super easy to recreate. All you have to do is manually keyframe the opacity and position. Then add a Gaussian blur and keyframe that as well. Remember, easy ease the frames whenever you're done. Alright, so now that we're done with our circles, let's animate that curvy line, which is a little bit tricky since we have to play around with the speed. In his animation, it's constantly changing from slow to fast and back to slow. So first, select your pen tool. No fill, and a nice value is like 6 for the stroke. Now just create a line and make it curvy. However, make sure when it strikes the ball, it does it from where the crack actually happens, so it makes sense, or else the animation will just look weird. I'm just going to fast forward this a little bit since it requires some trial and error. However, I'm going to let you watch me for a bit so you can see how I've accomplished it. Once I was done, this is what I had and I liked it a lot. So I moved on to the next step, and that's applying trim path. You want to create a keyframe from where you want the line to start, and then go towards the end and change the value to 100%. On the right, under shape properties, select the two middle options for line cap and line join. Also, just like we did with the graph lines, I'm going to add a taper. You can just copy my settings. Alright, so to actually time this right, we're gonna do something called time remapping, because when you look at his animation, you can tell that this line is not moving at a constant speed. It's constantly changing. So it will go fast, it will start slow, and then just before it hits, it increases speed, right? And then there's like that impact shake on the screen. The thing shatters, it continues, and boom, and then boom again. So basically, this is how we're gonna do it. It's honestly very simple. I'm gonna explain this as I'm doing it. I'm gonna take the shape, pre-compose it. All right, you have to do this. Now, right click, time, and enable time remapping. Now, this is gonna take a bit of trial and error, okay? Right now, it just, it's simply moving at the same pace, just like we did with the trim path. So we're gonna create another keyframe. Now, here's how this works, all right? If I move this all the way close to the first keyframe, this line is gonna animate in lightning speed. As you can see, it's already done. So for now, we're just gonna drag this all the way to the end. In fact, I'm actually just gonna delete it, okay? I'm gonna create a keyframe before the shattering, which I have marked right here, and one after. So before it shatters, I want the line to move slowly. So maybe I make a keyframe here. And trust me, this is gonna be a lot of trial and error. This is exactly how I did it when I was first recreating this animation, right? I had to keep trying it over and over again to get the timing right. The line is gonna move super slowly because of these two keyframes right here I just created. However, I needed to move even slower, so I'm gonna drag this out. And I'm actually gonna just move this a bit here so it starts later. And here I would want it to start speeding up. Alright, so I'm gonna make another keyframe. Alright. And then you're gonna see it's gonna drastically increase speed. So I'm just gonna have to adjust this second one right here, which is gonna affect where it is. So I'm gonna just bring it until it makes sense. And that's the first one pretty much done, I think. So you'll see it's slow. The line is gonna start slow. Then once it hits this keyframe, it's gonna start speeding up. And it's gonna go through the thing all of a sudden, which is what we need. Speed up. And as you can see, it's a bit too early, so I can slow this down just a little bit. So now, boom. And if you want to really even go further, boom. And it's just gonna go through that line. And then we just have to keep doing that with the other two, like, cracks. And yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, so I'm gonna keep going. You know, I'm gonna create a keyframe where, let's say here, I want it to start speeding up. I'm gonna go further, create another one, and just move this around until it makes sense from the shattering point. So as you can see, it needs to be faster, and then maybe right here. So yep, it starts slow, and right here this is where it starts increasing the speed, and boom. And it's gonna look super sick once we add like all the effects and the shake. But yeah, that's literally it. That's how this time remapping works. As you can see, I already did it, right? The distance between these two keyframes right here are, you know, it's longer, so it's gonna go slower. And then this is closer, so it's gonna be faster right here. And that's like as basic as it gets. So same thing. I'm like, okay, right here, I want it to start speeding up. Let's say. Or maybe even closer, right here. So I'll make a keyframe. Then I'll move till the end. Let's say not too far after, maybe right here. And I'll adjust this. So I'll bring this right here. And I just want this line to be, okay, so maybe, okay, so I did a mistake here. This should probably be over like this. All right. And then it starts increasing speed here. So then I bring this much closer. Okay. And it strikes it like around here. So it's going to be slow here. It's going to start increasing speed right here. And it's going to go very fast right through that shape. And it's going to start slowing down again. Fast and slow. And that's it. I did it. And if you were following along, you could probably do it too. Like, honestly, this is the most basic of time remapping you're going to get, honestly. Like, this starts slow, accelerates, slow, accelerates, slow again, and then accelerates right here, boom, and it ends off by going slow. So it's just very smooth. And that's it. That's the speed and timing done. There is also some 3D, which isn't too complex. However, we need the camera to create that focus blur and also to zoom in right at the beginning. So make every layer 3D except the background. Anything that belongs to the background, do not make it 3D. Once you do that, create a null object, make it 3D, and parent the camera to the null object. And then keyframe position. Change the Z value, so the value all the way to the right, to -200. And then move 2 seconds, and then change it back to 0. And also copy my graph. We want it to start instantly fast at the beginning and then slow down. Next, we want to open up our camera and keyframe focus distance, aperture, and blur level. I had to play with this for a little bit, so just copy the values up on the screen right now. Then go 1 second further and change the values to the ones shown. So we should have something like this. Next, go to the moment where we want to be zoomed in. Add a marker. Go 1 frame back and just add keyframes again by pressing this button on the left. Do it for both the camera and the null object. Now go 1 frame forward and copy my values again. Finally, go to the end of the scene, make a new keyframe just for the null object, and reposition it at the top right. Make sure you select both of these keyframes and press F9. Now we are pretty much done with the animation. If you want to know how I turn this,
it does not matter if the US dollar collapses. It doesn't matter if there's a war. It doesn't matter if there's a recession. It doesn't matter
into this.
It does not matter if the US dollar collapses. It doesn't matter if there's a war. It doesn't matter if there's a recession. It doesn't.
Then check out the video that I linked below. I broke down all the effects step by step. And if you learned something new, please consider subscribing. These types of videos take so much effort and time to make. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.